the elephant occupied a prominent place in the urban life of medieval Cairo. This is attested both in visual and textual sources. However, it is not an Egyptian particularity. The elephant has a long tradition in Arab culture that is amply documented in bestiaries and cosmological literature, referring to pre-Islamic sources and periods, and also to Eastern connections. Moreover, as it was said this morning, the Prophet is said to have been born in the year of the elephant, Am al-Fil, and that year the Christian Abyssinian ruler of Yemen is said to have attempted to raid the city of Mecca with an army that included elephants, led by one elephant who, however, refused to enter the city. And this elephant is mentioned in religious sources as called Mahmud, which means the praised. In the 14th century, the Mamluk author Ad-Damiri compiled a bestiary, Hayat al-Hayawan, that mainly repeats earlier traditions. In the interpretation of dreams, the elephant symbolizes foreign Eastern power. I just wanted to show this, the fragment of this manuscript, which is in the British Museum, about which I know nothing and I couldn't find anything. It is written on it, Garzafil riding the elephant, and fil rhymes with the Garzafil is the name, and this is a kind of jinn riding an elephant and holding a sword. I don't know what it is, what it means. I never came across this legend or history. It was found in the ruins of Fustat in Cairo. I hope someone can help, perhaps. There are not many illustrated medieval manuscripts from Egypt, but this one is illustrated manuscripts of the 14th century, not exactly dated, and it is a copy of a 9th century text of a bestiary by Al-Gahiz. Very interesting feature about this manuscript is that it represents almost all animals copulating. And this is a particular original feature of this manuscript, which is now in Milan. In the Egyptian capital, the presence of elephants is well established already in the 9th century under the Tulunid governors, who held in the palaces elaborate menageries with designated stables to various exotic animals, among which were the elephants. One of the palaces was called Dar al-Fil, the house of the elephant. It is also remarkable that the topography of medieval Cairo has several references to elephants. This is the map done by Napoleon's scholars in the late 18th century, and it shows the medieval city of Cairo. And here we see Cairo was surrounded to the west and the south and the north on three sides by ponds. And the largest of the ponds of medieval Cairo is this one, was called Berket el-Fil. We don't know exactly why it was called Berket el-Fil. There's one reference which mentions that one of the governors of Ibn Tulun in the 9th century, or one of the dignitaries of Ibn Tulun in the 9th century, was called al-Fil. The question is whether he was named al-Fil because of his size. That could be, again, a reminiscence of the elephant. There was also Jazirat al-Fil, which means the island of the elephant, which must have developed here sometime. It emerged in the 12th century during the Ayyubid period when the Nile receded to the west. The island grew above the wreck of a large boat that was sunken there, and the boat was called al-Fil, probably because of its size. There was, well, this island doesn't exist anymore. The whole topography has changed here. There was also a Fatimid mosque called Jama al-Fi'la, the Mosque of the Elephants. It was a lavish building founded in 1105 by the Vizier al-Afdal Shahin Shah. It owed its name to the fact that it was vaulted, and seen from afar, its profile recalled elephants carrying armored palanquins, mudarra'at, like, and the sources say, like those displayed in festive processions. The term mudarra'at, which is today used for tanks and armored vehicle, is normally used in a military context, which suggests that the elephant in the festive occasion would play martial game, or would be involved in some kind of martial game. So there is a military connection as well here. There was also in Fatimid Cairo, that is between the 10th and 12th century, an open space called Rahabat al-Afyal, the square of the elephants, where the Fatimid caliphs kept their elephants. Fatimid caliphs used elephants in the processions. For example, Al-Hakim in the late 11th century, in the late 11th century, in the late 9th century, 10th century and early 11th century, is mentioned riding in a procession with great pomp to his mosque to celebrate the feast of fast breaking, accompanied by 6 elephants and 5 giraffes. Also, the treasuries of the Fatimid palaces included designated halls for the storage of the elephants' ceremonial outfits. These were carapaçons in red brocade and with gold. It is therefore not surprising that the ceremonial and festive context of the elephant in the Fatimid period would be reflected in the visual arts. In Fatimid luster pottery, this is a view of Birkat al-Fil in the late 18th century, which we have seen here. And this is a luster pottery of the Fatimid, which is one of the greatest or major decorative arts of the Fatimid period, where luster pottery with metallic shine. And there's a whole cycle among these very valuable kind of pottery representing exotic animals and entertainments. And among them, we can see here in the upper part a giraffe by the tendon, an elephant in the middle, and below you see a tamer or with a cheetah or a leopard. So this entertainment cycles within the Fatimid pottery also includes elephants. And here, probably also from the Fatimid period, is an elephant represented in a water, in the filter of a water jar. So these filters usually have plenty of different motifs, including fish and rabbits and so on, very popular and very familiar views. We also have here an elephant among them. I'm sure there would be many. Elephants were favored as motifs for the decoration of ceremonial tents, also in the Fatimid period. This type of textiles was described as mufayyal, which comes from the word fil, elephant, meaning the textile, the elephant's textile. Like there was also another type called al-mutayyar, referring to textiles decorated with birds. So decorative tents were either in birds, decorated with birds, or with elephants. On festive occasions, again under the Fatimid rule, figurines were made of sugar in the shape of exotic animals that were distributed to people, including elephants. When Salah ad-Din overthrew in 1171 the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt, he sent loads of gifts from the Fatimid treasuries to his master Nur ad-Din al-Zanki in Damascus. These included an elephant, among other exotic animals. Nur ad-Din forwarded some of the gifts to his nephew, the ruler of Mosul, who forwarded them to the caliph in Baghdad. The elephant continued to hold a prominent position also during the Mamluk Sultanate, that is from 1250 to 1517. The fact that the elephant was normally a familiar sight in Cairo is attested by the chronicler Ibn Iyas, who wrote that when in the year 1510 a small one-year elephant arrived in Cairo from Africa at the court of Sultan al-Ghul, Cairo was rocked by the sight of the beast, because people had not seen an elephant for more than 40 years. That means 40 years without elephant was an exceptional situation. Elephants had always belonged to the menageries of the Mamluk sultans, whereas European visitors were not allowed to enter mosques at that time. They were allowed to visit the sultan's palace and his menagerie, and they regularly described them in their accounts. According to the travelers in the 14th century, the menagerie located near the citadel, which was the royal residence, included between 5 and 6 elephants. There were also other exotic animals in this menagerie, notably giraffes and sometimes crocodiles. In 1402, the death of an elephant belonging to the Sultan's menagerie became a matter of public concern in Cairo. When the big elephant called Marzouk, meaning prosperous, was taken by the groom for a walk in the outskirts of Cairo, it stumbled on a bridge and had its foot caught in a breach from which it could not be freed. Masses of people flocked in to watch the sad spectacle of the dying elephant, and many poems were composed in commiseration with Marzouk's tragic fate. Since the very early history of Islam, elephants were almost obligatory diplomatic gifts, notably to Western monarchs. The white elephant called Abu al-Abbas, sent to Charlemagne by Harun al-Rashid, is a well-known case. Elephants came to Egypt as diplomatic gifts from Africa and India, and they were sent in turn as diplomatic gifts to Europe. Already under the Fatimids, Nubia sent gifts to Egypt that included, among other things, giraffes, elephants, and ivory, and slaves. The Sultan Az-Zahir Baybars, in the mid-13th century, brought Nubia under Mamluk supremacy, and from then on, the Nubians were expected to send such goods as a tribute to Egypt. So Baybar would send elephants to Alfonso X of Castile and the Mongol ruler Berke of the Golden Horde. Indian elephants came via Yemen, where the Rasulid rulers regularly sent the Mamluks tribute-like gifts that always included elephants. Upon receiving such a gift, an unnamed Mamluk Sultan wrote to the Rasulid Sultan of Yemen, Al-Mujahid Ali, who ruled between 1321 and 1363. This one we don't know which Mamluk Sultan because there were more than one at that time. He wrote him a letter to thank him and praise his gifts. The letter praised the elephant as having a trunk that strikes like a polo stick and moves like a snake and swings like a dancer, cajoling the audience with her sleeves. The significance of Yemen as intermediary in Far East trade is confirmed by a message sent in 1283 from the ruler of Ceylon to Al-Mansur Qalawun. In this letter, he offered his friendship to the Mamluk Sultan, inviting him to deal directly with him without the intermediary of Yemen, and offering to provide him with valuable and rare goods that also included elephants. In 1403, Timur sent Sultan Farad ibn Barkuk, among other things, an elephant, probably from his booty in India. It carried a palanquin with a man waving green banners. The historian Ibn Iyas described the palanquin as carrying musicians playing cymbals. Such elephants have also been described in detail by the Spanish envoy Clavijo when he visited Timur's court in 1404. He described them as clad with silk and carrying yellow and green banners, with a palanquin large enough to carry 5 or 6 men, while a man straddling the elephant's neck would coach the animal and conduct its performance. Indeed, elephants are often represented with palanquin that could carry several passengers. In the Khalili collection, there is a ceramic sculpture from 12th century Syria in the shape of an elephant with a palanquin carrying musicians. You'll see someone trombone and someone holding the drum. On the right side, you have a shadow play figure of Egypt. Could be any time from, it's not easy to date, but from 15th to 18th century, also showing musicians on a palanquin, in a palanquin riding an elephant. It's also interesting that in the metalworks, particularly the high quality and ceremonial metalwork of the 12th to 14th century in Egypt, Syria, and Iraq, which is a group of metalwork inlaid with silver, we find elephants as well among the decoration. For example, in this basin, probably late 13th century or early 14th century, in the Victoria and Albert Museum, you can see here a musician, an elephant. It was all originated with, wherever you see the yellow spots here, it would have been silver inlaid and, excuse me, engraved as well. Here's the image again, and there's a painting with musician riding the elephant. Also, in metalwork of the same period, we have often frieze of animals running one after the other, pursuing each other clockwise or anti-clockwise. And they often, or very often, contain elephants. Interestingly, in this animal frieze, the elephant is always preceded by a unicorn. And it's always this combination of unicorn and elephant, as we see here in this very famous basin of the late 13th century in the Louvre, the so-called Baptistère de Saint-Louis. In another basin, we also see here, and it's almost a regular feature, the elephant preceded by the unicorn who seems to try to attack him. This was drawn to my attention by my colleague and friend Salam Kawukchi and the Sabah collection in Kuwait. And she also showed me that the same feature appears also on ceramic, Iranian ceramic of the 13th century, and here in marble carving in Konya. So I tried to keep why the elephant and the unicorn always just poking in his back. And the only thing I could find, but perhaps someone of you could help, is that the unicorn is usually described as very powerful, very strong, and this is why it can even pierce an elephant. So one of the features of the unicorn is that it is stronger than the elephant. It can pierce the elephant and carry the elephant up. So I don't know more if there's any legend or any story to find about that. And here is a 15th century, also royal piece of a jar in the name of the wife of Sultan Qaitbay. It's a bit damaged, but where you see the red arrow here and here as well as yes, here there is also depiction of elephant. This one is not that good. Because of the exotic value, elephants sent as gifts were commemorated in art. Sultan Jakmak sent an elephant to each of the Ottoman sultans, Murad II and Mehmed II, and Huri sent one to Selim. One of the 3 elephants sent to Murad by Jakmak is likely to have appeared 9 years later in the celebration of a wedding representing the wedding of Mehmed II. We also find in Milan, in the Castello Sforzesco in Milan today, there is a fresco showing an elephant accompanied by a dark attendant. And it's very interesting because at this time, we know that Sultan Qaitbay sent an elephant to the Duke of Milan, Galeesco Sforza, and this is the time when this elephant was depicted. And it's also interesting that in Southampton Court here, we have the painting by Mantegna representing the procession of Julius Caesar in Rome after coming back from Egypt, and we see here elephants, and the elephants carry are decorated with pseudo-Arabic inscription here. So the one who must depict the elephant must have seen an elephant that indeed was sent by Sultan Kadbe in the 1460s, 70s to the Duke of Milan. So, in 1512, an embassy from India marched in Cairo with two big elephants adorned with sumptuous trappings, attracting a huge crowd. The elephants were then displayed at the hippodrome, where they performed a fight accompanied by drums and trumpets to the Sultan's delight. Perhaps these are like the ones represented in India, in Lahore, at the fort of Lahore, the fights of elephants. Al-Ghuri seems to have been particularly fond of elephants, perhaps because of the preceding 40 years of elephant penury mentioned earlier. He enjoyed spectacles with animals fight that included performance with fighting elephants, or also lions, bulls, and rams. He used in his elephants in his and his emir's festive procession on the occasion of the Nile festival, when the Cairo, when the flood of Nile flood was celebrated, also to accompany departing pilgrimage caravan carrying banners and preceded by an orchestra playing drums and trumpets. He also sent gifts to his deputies, governors of Aleppo and Damascus. To impress an Ottoman embassy in 1514, he sent elephants to accompany the diplomatic processions from the citadel down to the residence. Finally, elephants accompanied him to the last of all Mamluk processions. When Al-Ghuri departed with great pomp to meet the Ottoman Sultan Selim on the battlefield of Majd-Dabat in Syria, that would seal the fate of the Mamluk Sultanate, he was accompanied by the 3 elephants of the royal menagerie. According to Ibn Iyas, they were even intended to be used in battle. Neither Al-Ghuri nor his elephants ever returned. Thank you for your attention.